Hi, welcome to the Dave Palmer Show. And with me in this episode, I have a corporate trainer, author of fiction and non-fiction books, and a former online instructor, Cassandra Smith. Welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Pleasure to have you and excited to talk to you as well. And obviously, one of my favorite topics, obviously, with my challenges in the workplace, and with the work you do, is very well, still even more needed out there, actually. So we're going to have a good conversation for the next 30 minutes around, give or take. Pleasure to have you once again. So tell me, I mean, before we go, obviously, from your perspective, your publicist gave me the title "Mean Girls in the Workplace: How to Survive and Thrive."
Mhm.
Could you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So it's interesting when I hear it back. I was like, oh my God, I survived it. I survived it. And I wanted to tell others how to do so as well. So as you mentioned before, I'm an educator. I taught online for 9 years, my professorship in education. And then I started working for a corporate airline.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not going
Which
to
one?
mention the name.
Oh no, okay. Don't mention it.
A corporate airline, and I'm
Yeah,
also a writer. I enjoy writing, storytelling, nonfiction, and fiction books.
yeah,
So, my recent book, A Confidence Slayer's Fragile Souls, is what
yes.
I wrote about when I experienced the issues with the mean girls in the corporate environment. It was my
Hmm.
first time working in the corporate environment, moving from being in an online environment or teaching online, being in the education realm to working in a corporate setting. So it was a unique opportunity because I got to apply everything that I learned in my PhD program as well as in my experience to the corporate setting in teaching and training adults. So I was leading training. I came in as a manager, level 10, and in the corporate environment, the levels are super important as well because everybody's vying for a high level position. So my next upward mobility step would have been a general manager, and it just goes on from there, then a managing director. So I was excited, but that wasn't my train of thought when I got there. I just wanted to do a great job and apply what I had learned, as I mentioned before, in the corporate setting. But I didn't know that I was entering the lion's lair, the den, the mean
Mhm.
girls who are
Wow.
vying for positions, some which they already held. So
Hmm.
if you think about a lion, right, and he's in his den, he's in his inhabitant and his territory, he's very territorial, right, to
Hmm.
anything that poses a threat to the den. And
Hmm.
I didn't realize I was a threat because it was my first corporate job. I got a $10,000 signing bonus. I'd never seen that much money just to sign on. I was enjoying the perks.
Wow,
And I,
it sounds good to me.
I know, right? It wasn't even my train of thought to go in and try to get a higher role. I just wanted to do my best. I've always been a benevolent type person and a hard worker. I learned that from my father. And so when I got there, I was surrounded by mean girls. They did everything in the true sense of the word gaslighting. They trivialized everything that
Mhm.
I said or
Yeah.
did. They trivialized training, the department that I was head
Right.
of,
Yeah.
withholding. I was
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
out of meetings, and they withheld information from me. I was really on my own in the corporate environment. And when I say mean girls, the VP was not a, I mean, she was a mean girl, fostering it more. My manager, she wasn't friendly to me after the guy who hired me, he left. So I was really on my own. And then countering questions that I would get when I would make a suggestion or my ideas weren't well received. It was like, are you sure about that? It's making me question myself. So that's gaslighting in a true sense. And
Right.
so I worked there for the airline for 3 years. I enjoyed the perks, but I just wasn't really thriving. I didn't really in getting the support that I needed. I wasn't set up for success as well. So in the book Confidence Slayer Fragile Souls, I titled it Confidence Slayers. Well, I originally called it Killers because that's when you feel like you're being slaughtered essentially.
Yeah,
But when you're dealing with confidence, when your confidence takes a huge hit, it's hard to rebound. It's perennial. You have to do the work, to really get it back to where it needed to be. And encountering these mean girls, I was losing my voice slowly, 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 and I didn't even realize it. So I thought, killers, I want to be able to resurrect from it. I believe I can. So I titled the book Confidence Slayers, Fragile Souls, meaning that we're all sensitive. And that's what helped me kind of get through it as well, realizing
yeah.
that they were protective, they were territorial, and they were scared of me at the end of the day.
And these are
But
leaders, are they?
these were leaders, and
Yeah.
leaders who were mean individuals who weren't inclusive. And so,
Mm.
I know we talk about inclusivity a lot, and it is super important, but the level of respect has to be there, even if you don't like someone. And that's what was lacking at the airline. And so I wrote
Okay.
the book to, well, first of all, after I left, to get it out, I had to release it from my spirit, because it was draining. It was
Yeah.
draining my confidence. And then to help others, I started hearing about a lot of individuals struggling in the workforce. That is unbelievable when we spend so much time in the workforce. So I wrote it as a love letter to myself and to anyone else who is engaging with mean girls, to realize this is a thing. I don't know why we have to be so mean to each other. Yes, some of the guys are challenging to work with as well. And I thought, that it was more of a minority thing, and true to form, some of the minorities were experiencing it. The few of us that were in corporate more than others. But I realized that if you weren't in the in crowd with that particular popularity lady group, they were ladies, but they act like children, so I call them mean girls.
Yeah.
Then it transcended color, your race, or minorities, or because they did it to anyone who they did not like, who were a threat to their pride, so to speak. So and it was challenging, to say the least of the most, but I did it, and I realized that we're fragile souls, and everyone is sensitive. My sister used to say, "You're sensitive," when I was little, and I realized that it's easy to break a spirit, to break someone's soul, to be negative. So how do we get past that? And that's what I wanted to concentrate on.
Yeah, wow. Well, I didn't realize you was actually referring to the airline industry when when you mentioned that. And I dated a cabin crew. Well, she was a supervisor actually, and she did come across a little bit mean actually. We probably didn't last it because of that actually in the past. This is a long, long time ago. That was Virgin Airlines, so I mean, you've heard of Virgin anyway. And I assume you're talking about cabin crews and things like
Mhm,
that, more
mhm,
that kind of thing, because that's where the workforce mostly is, aren't they? Really.
mhm, mhm,
Um, so yeah, now I can see where you're coming from with that. And in any case, obviously, being a firefighter and being in the fire industry is a similar kind of hierarchical thing, and going through certain bureaucracies and things like that. So
mhm.
yeah, I see your point now, where you're coming from. Some
Yeah.
of it can be, I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, do you think it could be other messages as well? Like you said, it be a minority thing, or is it just a female thing?
Mhm.
Because you mentioned Mean Girls, or
Yeah, it certainly wasn't just a female thing, but from my experience, I realized that that was my experience, right? And then when I started hearing others, it was, how is it that women who, once we finally get a seat at the table or a position, that we are trying to gaslight others? So it was certainly not. Some of the men were challenging too, but in that group, the females led the promotions. They would promote the same individuals. When your ideas weren't well received, it was an automatic no. Some of the attributes of a confidence slayer. They and let me go back. Actually, let me explain what my perception of confidence. Confidence is I define it three ways: by action, you can do what you set out to do. It's
mm,
feeling based. You feel like you're adequate enough, and then it's presence. You know how someone say you have a strong presence online, or you see your favorite singer and they're so confident up there, you can see it, it's palpable,
yes, of
right?
course, yeah,
So
yeah,
a slayer, so the reason I called it, confident slayer, it's anyone who diminishes that by implied thoughts, word, action, right? They make you
yeah.
feel as if you are inadequate and you can't do
Right,
the job. So that's why I
right.
call,
I'm with you now.
confident slayer. So
I'm with you now. Yeah.
it could be anybody, to your point. It could be a male, it could be a peer.
Right.
I
Yeah.
put the
Yeah.
onus on the leaders in my book
Right.
because I think it's super important, whether you are a people manager or whether you are a C-suite, to cultivate a work environment that is conducive to employers and to employees.
Yeah.
Because handling mishandled conflict among peers. So yes, it's peer-to-peer sometime, but in my research, the onus is really on leaders to do better, and that's what I'm not finding, and that's why I'm saying, oh, it's mean girls. It could be men, men who
Yeah.
are not
Yeah.
fostering the work environment as well. But I wrote the book because I was so frustrated with how women were handling issues with other women who
Yeah.
felt this up. And I have to say this because I would be remiss if I didn't. Most minorities, or a lot of minorities, and I think I can say that when we get a position, as I did at the airline with the
Mm.
perks, it was my first one.
Yeah.
We're not trying to come in and take over.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be whatever people automatically think a Black woman is, or stereotypical and all that. We're just trying to get in there, do our jobs, help our families, because those
Yeah.
opportunities don't
You're trying to
come.
progress as well, aren't you? You know,
Exactly,
was you a
exactly.
supervisor? Was you, or would you go up to supervisor level or something? Or is that what it was on the airlines? Yeah.
Yes, and it was
Yeah.
my supervisors and the VP. They just cultivate, and they did nothing to set me up for success. It was
Mm.
all, they were all confidence slayers. And
Yeah.
then I called one young lady, and I prayed about it because I am spiritual. I'm like, God forgive me. I said I called her Annabelle. You know Annabelle, the little Chucky doll, like the Chucky doll. It's a movie.
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
she was like of Satan. I tell you, she was so mean, so pretty. She fit the profile of everything that they wanted in corporate to be,
Yeah.
that I had no idea about. I'd heard the stories, but when I got there, it started. And I was like, oh my God, this is Annabelle in herself, because she was the head of the Mean Girls. They would go to lunch together.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and you have to remember, I was part of the leadership team. These are things that
Yes.
I should have
Yes.
been included in that
Yeah.
I was not included in. And it would
Yeah.
have been okay because I've been in majority of white schools all my life, so I'm used to not
Oh, okay.
being,
Yeah.
it would have
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
fine if they weren't marginalizing me
Yeah. Yeah.
to the point where I couldn't do my job and my confidence started to dwindle. And so I encourage anyone who is a victim of a confidence slayer, a target, to keep improving your skills, because that's what I did. I mean, I've always wanted to learn. Of course, I'm in education and
Hmm.
training. So improve your skills, understand your
Yes.
self-worth.
Yeah.
Sometimes that comes easier than others. I was fortunate to be in a home where self-worth was cultivated. So I had that piece. And then move on. I eventually moved on. COVID actually was a respite for me because we started to
Okay.
work online at the
Right.
corporate airline. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with it as much.
Yeah.
And then I took the voluntary opt-out package and I left. And it wasn't until I left that I realized that I was in a verbally abusive
Abusive.
a relationship, a toxic work environment. So that's what the book is
With,
about.
with work, with the workplace. You're not talking about
With the
personally
work.
in home,
Exactly.
not
Exactly.
domestically. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it
I
was
mean, both can ruin your confidence, and
exactly right.
but both
Exactly.
play, as you've mentioned, or was mentioned in the piece that your publicist said, and I know myself, is that you spend a hell of a lot of time in the
Hmm.
workplace. So
Hmm.
you spend a lot of time at home as well. You spend 8 hours at work, 8 hours at home, and 8 hours
Hmm.
sleeping. So, and
Hmm.
this sleep is important too. So if you're
Hmm.
getting all that stuff, how can you sleep well, as well?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, it's all very important, really, whether it's a workplace or in the home.
Right, exactly. And some people are abused at home, not if
Yeah.
not physically, verbally. I'm
Mm.
fortunate to have a good husband, a good support system, but in the workforce, it was not. I realized that I was in a toxic work environment. I had lost my voice, I had lost my confidence, and mine was, as I mentioned before, I knew I could do the job. That wasn't it. Like I had that. Training was. I am the training person. I mean, my company helps train individuals get their training intact, and I've always been a type person that learned. Mine was that I was more so my conflict was inner, like what do they not see in me? Why am I not good enough to be in this role, to be accepted by them? They don't have to be my best friend, my BFF, but
No,
at
don't.
least help me. Let me know is what am I doing to make you not want to work with me. And it was challenging. And that's when I had to go back. Well, I thought I did have confidence. And then I had to go back and do the work again and realize that, okay, now I need to practice what I preach, really get the point that I need to stand in my God-given talents. And that's what my message, Jeremiah 29 is my 11 is my favorite scripture. For I know the plans I have for you. God has called all of us, whatever race we are, to use our talents, to do our purpose. And we have to not let people hinder that, as much as we can control. And I should have had the difficult conversation. And I did not. I did not tell them how I was feeling. Unfortunately, I had the field sales support, the sales reps, who I was developing the training for. But I lost my voice.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Lost your voice as in you didn't have a voice to speak out, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Not as in your throat was sore.
Exactly.
For anyone, just
metaphorically.
Yeah, no, exactly, metaphorically. Yeah, no, but some people don't understand that, so I just want to say it because obviously, I got involved with trade union work, and even within the trade union, there can be issues as well. So that you got to look out for that. So as people, whether it's gender or minority or just a bullying culture, which it sounds like a very toxic situation that you're talking about. And I know I had to deal with that. It's a voice that you need to speak out. That's what we're really talking about here.
Did you find that you did have the words?
Initially, no, I had to go out and educate myself more. I went out, to study a politics degree because I was involved in a trade union. But of course, you find factions and even difficulties there and things that don't work out quite well. Learn about the legal system, employment law, and everything else. And then obviously, my stress levels went up and. All kinds of. I wrote a book called Firefighting from Within: How to Master the Tools of Life Even During Tough Times, because I put my school days in it, with my dyslexia and things like that, which I didn't find out till I was 40 years old. So that was part of it. So yeah, there's all kinds of things going on. But yeah, I didn't initially have a voice, and all those things I mentioned, going out to get a degree, going out to write a book, which I got help with as well. Was things I had to go out and do to get that voice and create that platform. This podcast is my platform, as you can imagine, and great guests like you coming on is creating that platform to speak out about things and issues like this.
It's amazing that, you mentioned all the action steps you took. And that's what it takes, action steps to rebuild our confidence again when we are the target of a confidence slayer. And I would love to say that I have never been a confidence slayer. I have. When I first started managing people, I did not give the best performance feedback for individuals who weren't performing well. I was very direct in saying, it was too direct. And I realized that I was breaking someone's confidence, and I was taking a confidence hit. So it didn't take me long to realize that I needed to do better with the way I gave feedback. Right.
Yeah.
And then, so when I was writing the book and the definition of a slayer, I said, okay, I've been this before too. And that did help give some grace and forgiveness for the individuals who didn't treat me well. And the few minorities that were there, even though I came in at a high level, they weren't at that level. They never made it to that level. They made excuses to get rid of them, to fire them, or created such a hostile environment that they left. And I thought that was problematic too. And I actually went to the VP and addressed the issue about one person that they were letting go. Interesting enough, I could do it for someone else, but I couldn't do it for myself. And her response was, "Oh, I hadn't noticed how minorities were being treated. I would pay more attention to that going forward." I'm like, how did
little sweep under the carpet there, like, I didn't see that, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So it takes action to everything that you mentioned to build your confidence up. But it was interesting. Like I mentioned, I couldn't do it for myself, but I did it for someone else. And it didn't get any better. So eventually I did move on. And then sometimes you have to do that to realize that you are in a verbally abusive, I have to be careful not to say verbally abusive workforce that is just not working. And then one of the final things I would say too is that for leaders, that if you are in a leadership role, it is incumbent upon you to help your employees not dissuade their confidence, but to employees not dissuade their confidence, but foster an environment where they can have employee support, where they could get that support from their peers as well. And if you are a confidence slayer, think about some of the attributes that I mentioned. Are you automatically dismissing people? Are the same people getting the promotions? Or do you have this little in crowd that you constantly engage with.
Yeah.
If you want to
Like
do
a
better, some
circle,
people
look,
just need.
management circles mainly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
not doing skip level meetings to find out who's leading your people
Yeah.
and
Not
how
coming
they
from the
feel in the company.
CEO or chief, fire chief, as we say. It's coming from these little circles of bad leaders that want to get together and ruin other lives because they
Exactly.
just don't like them. It's nothing to do with the ability to do the job, you know.
Right.
And it could be
Exactly.
because you've spoken out, because you did have a voice, like I did
Mhm.
eventually have, you know. Well, actually, I did
Exactly.
speak out, but it was kind
Mhm.
of, we're going to keep the lid on this guy. He's too loud. Kind of,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's
Wow.
challenge.
Okay. Well, let's find out more about how anyone, more about you, a little bit more about your book and your work before we can point people to your website and everything else. So tell us more about your book first, and then the work you do with it.
So as I mentioned before, the book is about well, I've written a couple, but I've written four
Oh, both of
nonfiction
them. Yeah.
books,
Yes,
and this one is called Confidence Slayer Fragile Souls. It's my latest baby. And as I
yeah.
mentioned, I talk about the thriving with the mean girls and what you can do to make yourself better. And you hit the nail on the head when it comes to is that how the saying goes? I'm like, wait a minute, did I say that right? You got it. The
Yeah.
extra steps that you need to take to build your self-worth back,
Yeah.
to invest in yourself and your
Yes.
God-given
Yeah.
talents, and then to speak up when you,
Yes.
even if it doesn't change. Don't wait
Yeah.
like I did, but really address the issue there. I don't like that you're treating me this way and that way.
Yeah.
And then and also what helped too is, as I mentioned before, to realize the young lady I called Annabelle, she was threatened by me, and someone, my husband had told me that too, where they're scared of you. You're the only one with a PhD out of everybody in the department. You're the only one with a PhD. And then one of the sales leaders came back and told me the same thing. They were scared of you, and I'm like, scared of me? As I mentioned before, I'm just trying to do my job and trying to learn.
If it's not scared, it's jealousy, isn't it? And then they'll try and do something about that, won't they? You
Right,
know. So
exactly. So and just remember too, if when you're working through the mean girls, to try to realize that they're coming from a place of fear or a place of jealousy as well, and you can give them a little grace but not have them disrespect you. So that's what that book is about. I have some products to help in the remote space as well. One is a app called Virtual Behaviors. I've written some fiction books, as I mentioned before. So yes, that's me, and I love training, and I love helping individuals really get their work and their training intact, because I apply adult learning theory to training adults in the workforce, and that's my unique identifier.
all right. So let me get this right. You've come off the airlines now. I think you spoke to me earlier about that. You used to
Mhm.
work for an airline, or you're not
Mhm.
involved with airlines anymore.
No,
You're actually a
I am free. Praise the Lord, I am free.
I love that. And but you're a consultant. It's your own business, because I see you set up your own website. We're going to get
Yes.
the name and your own company. Actually, what's the name of the
Yeah.
company again?
McBride and Smith Training
Yeah.
Advisory Group. We do
So
all things training, in person training, face to face, online. We create the right suite of e-learning courses, and it's
mhm,
called McBrideSmithTraining.com.
mhm.
McBride Smith SMITH
Yep.
Training.com.
Okay, that's great. So within that, I'm sure they'll see on that website everything that you do. But just tell us a little snippet of some of the things. So I'm sure it evolved from your experience of leaving the airline completely, or did it overlap? Did you kind of like this website and this podcast evolved? I think I did, the book idea came first, so my book came first with a website, and then this came.
Well,
Is
I've
it like
always
that?
wanted to do training right, so to speak, because when I worked for individuals, it was always yes, but could we do it that this way or that way, and it wasn't really specific to the way the adults learn. So the company idea came for first after the airline, but then
Mm.
I heard in my spirit to write about my experience, and that's how the book came about,
Okay,
because I
yeah,
wanted to help other individuals really thrive the mean girls when they encounter women to
right,
women conflict. As a
yeah.
woman, what I did to try to get myself out of the muck and mire. So that the company came first, and then the book.
Okay. So, I mean, because mine was an overlap, so the book was, well,
Wow.
co-authored, because obviously with my dyslexia, I just didn't know how to go about writing a book, really. I still probably don't. But I've got more of an idea now. But
I think you do. I think
yeah,
you
I think I do. I've got to get my self-esteem up a bit there. I'll go to your company and get it more. But
That's
so
right. Call me.
I
We'll
think
work
it would have
through
been
it.
different if I was completely out of the organization writing about it, because you
Mhm.
have to be careful sometimes, don't you know, with certain things. And
Exactly.
but you know, you could literally you know, write whatever you want when you leave an organization, or but then people can write whatever they want about me, so it's kind of
Right,
like you
exactly,
don't want
exactly.
that to happen
As
either,
long as I don't mention any names, it's not hard to figure out, but it's my
exactly, yeah.
experience. So
Well,
and it was my experience. So they could all
yeah,
guide
yeah.
away.
No, it's in a helpful way, isn't it? Like in the same way my book was. So it
Exactly.
wasn't mentioning any real names. Actually, it was self-published, my book, and when the self-published company went through the manuscript, they said, "Oh, well, the co-author wrote about her mum in it and said you've got to take your mum out of that. We don't want that in there." And I said, "Yeah, that weren't me. It was the co-author's experience
Hmm.
she's putting in there to help me
Hmm.
illustrate my general theme about overcoming obstacles wherever in life, work, what we're talking about now, basically."
Hmm. Hmm.
um so yeah, I had to be careful, and you still have to be careful really in terms of what the publishers want. But I suppose people that write these kind of tell-all books, they go to a publisher that don't mind, because
Hmm.
it's all part and parcel. But I don't know where they'll get them. Get them
Yeah,
the book sales, I suppose, really.
right.
You leave that to Hollywood or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have my message out.
Yeah. But yours is, and same as mine, is to help people. And, I do a bit of coaching with it, adversity
Exactly.
and overcoming resilience building and things like that, in the environment
Exactly.
of wherever you are. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. So, uh, obviously, so your modules is it what the workplace evolved straight after you left the corporate. So that was literally your next career move, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Yes. Just
so
to branch off on my own,
hmm,
to do training, I'd say the right way with my background and be much more succinct with busy adult learners. You really have to
yeah,
be able to chunk content. Apply different adult learning theories like behaviorism and andragogy and
right.
in order to help learners learn.
So
So that's they're fancy words for creating an experience for the learner in order to comprehend and go out and sell a product or whatever your business is.
yeah. So what's the step people need to do before they even think about going to your website? What's the first step they need to take?
Well, for leaders, if you really want to take an honest look at your training, who's managing your people, how are they showing up for work? How are you showing up for work? If you are have any of the confidence layer attributes, first I would say purchase the book, read it,
Mm.
take the self
Both
assessment.
books or just that book?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book, just that book, Confidence Slayer, Fragile Souls,
Right.
because
Okay.
there's a self-assessment in there to
Okay.
evaluate whether or not you are a confidence slayer. All right.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
and or a victim of it. And it's for
Hmm.
both individuals to read. And then contact me. I have some training classes on how not to lead better.
Hmm.
In the workforce, what kind of training that you need to support your employees and or your who's going to eventually support your customers. So those are the steps. I would definitely encourage it, not just for a book sale, but just to see whether you are a confidence slayer, especially if you're leading people and if you've been a target of a confidence slayer, because it's an inexpensive book. You can see what you can do, some steps to get better.
Right. Well, that sounds all really great to me. And you couldn't have been as much thorough and to the point as possible how you can help people out there. So, if you could just tell my listeners once more how they can get hold of you, your website, before we
Sure.
go.
Sure, I'm Dr. Cassandra McBride Smith, and my company is called McBride and Smith Training Advisory Group. And thank you all for listening. The website is McBrideSmithTraining.com, and check out Confidence Layers, Fragile Souls wherever you buy books, and you will learn a few things about boosting your confidence back, especially if you've been a victim of a confidence slayer.
Absolutely fantastic. Cassandra, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you about a topic that I'm very passionate about. I still talk about these things, it's still going on, and it's been a real godsend having you on the show today. Thank you very much for
Well,
coming on the
bless
show.
you, Dave. Likewise.